Okay, take two. I got Simo here. I wanted to talk about Born of Flame. Born of Flame deck. Okay, let's see if I can have to land. Ooh, that was close. But I landed on its mortal enemy, the Life King deck. Let's go in here. Again, for this deck build, I'm also not gonna throw every card in there because I know it's gonna go faster. And I've already done a take of this deck and it took like about an hour, so I'm gonna try and be as fast as possible here and talk about why I chose what I chose. Okay, so as you can see, there's Earthquake and two Red Sun Zeniths in the deck, and Blaze is not in the deck, and that's because it's the weakest of those kind of cards. And that's why Blaze is not in the deck, but these other three are, and I didn't feel that you needed 4 of these kind of effects. The deck operates very fast, and you don't get land flooded too often, so most of the time most you're gonna play it for is 5 or 6 mana, or maybe 4 for 5 mana, and it's not always really worth it at that price, so that's why I don't want to include the 4th one. Alright. Then these Flame Slashes, these are really key to this deck. I included both of them, even though you don't ever want to draw both of them unless you're doing really badly, but I feel like just having the ability to kill a 4 toughness creature is sometimes absolutely needed. There are some 4 toughness creatures in the game that will definitely give you trouble, so I feel like it's just great to have these. And I don't care about doing this in order, so I'm just gonna show you. I'm not running these Chandler's Outrages, so that's why I definitely want these Flame Slashes. Chandler's Outrage is 4 damage and 2 to their controller, so it's basically like some kind of card advantage in comparison to this one. However, this one is, well, I guess is a lot cheaper. So and tempo, I feel tempo is a keyword. That means that just if you're able to do a lot of things in one turn, if you're able to, you know, be faster than the opponent, that can be very important. And in this game, I feel like tempo is sometimes more important than card advantage, and this is only a very incremental bit of card advantage. I don't feel it's needed in this deck. This card in general is not powerful enough, I would say, to be included in this deck. But yeah, I was running like one of them maybe, but it was useful half the time and useless half the time, so it's like, you know, and in the end I decided to cut it. So and then of course Lightning Bolt is one of the best cards in the deck that obviously has to be in there. Red Sun Zenith I already talked about. These two are absolutely important. Just, you know, this deck doesn't have enough land for the kind of deck it tries to be, because it tries to be a controlling deck that kind of has a plan B, and this deck does, I mean, it does have X effects like these cards, even though I took one out, so having more mana is always useful for this deck, so that's why these are really great. And of course, if you get them against the mill deck, these are the most important card in the deck. Ruby Medallion, just if you get this out against the mill, especially if they try to make you draw a bunch of cards, then this just wins you the game against them. So very important card. Searing Blaze is an amazing card, really. Sometimes you're sitting with it in your hand because they're not drawing a card, but most of the time you can just throw this out there. And the fact that you have these in your deck means that you can be a little bit more liberal with the Searing Spears, which obviously you're gonna play anyways. At just being able to throw these at their face instead, you know. But I run all 7 of these. I run the 3 Searing Blazes and 4 Searing Spears. They're just really important. You gotta be able to kill their creatures, you know. I mean, I don't feel like I have to explain this. This is a burn deck, and you have to be able to burn. So looks like we're going to the 3 mana margin, so let's talk about these a little bit and why I didn't include them. These guys require you to pump mana in them, so like I talked about earlier with tempo, it's if they kill this guy when you're pumping mana in him, then you lose on tempo advantage. Okay, so that's one reason why they're not amazing. Reason number 2 is that both of them have only 1 toughness. That's also a reason why they're not amazing. Reason number 3 is all the other these Chandler Phoenixes, like all your other guys, either one, have something they do the turn they drop into play, like haste, or just dealing some damage when they come into play, or they are recurring. In the case of Chandra's Phoenix, they are both, or they're just that good that you can't not include them in the deck. And these kind of, the pump guys, they don't fit into any of those categories. And the Pyrocharger, another reason why you don't want to play them is they're on the ground, and there's a card in this deck that just really makes it so that you don't want to play anything with 3 or less toughness that doesn't fly. So that's why I don't include them. Rain of Embers is a very interesting card. I was looking at it, and I want to include it, but it just doesn't do enough in enough times. There's not enough matchups where I really want to draw this. Like for instance in Peacekeepers, if they're smart, then there are so many effects, so many Anthem effects in that deck, that if they're smart, they just don't drop any guys until they get an Anthem effect out. They just drop the Anthem first, and then they start dropping the guys. And the Rain of Embers doesn't do anything when that happens, except deal them 1 damage, and yourself 1 damage. Like, that's totally useless, and against goblins it's great, but that's really almost the only deck that it's genuinely amazing against. And every other deck, it's like maybe you kill 1 of the guys. That's not good. I'd rather just have something that can deal 3 damage or something. So then there's the Swiftfoot Boots with, well, I have 27.8% creatures in my deck, so that's definitely not enough to be running any equipment. I have to put on a creature. And most of my guys are recurring anyway, so I don't care about giving them Hexproof. And these Phoenixes have haste as well. This card is not fitting in this deck. I just don't know what it's doing in this deck. So Torch Fiend is a great card, but unfortunately it's on the ground. Yeah, and it's artifact destruction. So I guess, you would definitely side this in if you knew you were playing against Crosswinds or something. But other than that, the guy, normally, see, the point about this guy is that he's a dude either way. He's still always a goblin spear guy. I don't remember the name, but you know what I'm talking about. He's always a 2/1 for 2, so he's not terrible. He's still just something. And then sometimes he gets to destroy an artifact. So that's the kind of good removal against artifacts you want to have, because when they don't drop an artifact, you still at least get something out of him. But in this deck, unfortunately, even though all that is really good, he's on the ground, and you can't play any creatures that are on the ground. And why can't you play creatures that are on the ground? Well, actually, Fiery Hellhound also on the ground. Also it's probably the best one of these guys that has the fire breathing ability. That's what this ability is called. Used to be an enchantment, I think. That was called fire breathing, that you could give a creature. But anyways, out of the guys that have fire breathing, this is probably the best one, but you still wouldn't want to run him because he's also on the ground. And this is why you don't want to run these guys that are on the ground. Flame Break is your most amazing card ever, and you want to get as much advantage out of it as you can in this deck. For 3 mana, you can deal 3 damage to each creature without flying. So if all of your guys fly, what does that mean for them? That means all their guys die, and your guys still alive. Hey, that reminds me of Portal, still alive. Anyways, I'm not gonna be doing the robot voice song and dance thing here, but Flame Break is an amazing card, and it does deserve dancing, I would say, for how amazing this card is. Alright, enough bullshit. You guys should know how amazing this card is. Also, something to keep in mind, this is the only card in your deck that can actually kill creatures that can regenerate. Or at least can prevent them from regenerating, so that's something important to know. If you're facing someone who has Worship and the regenerating O2 guy in the Exalted deck, then Flame Break is your only out against that. Anyways, Chandra's Phoenix, amazing card. I don't know why you wouldn't run this, so I don't really think I should be. I need to even talk about this, but let's do it anyway. Flying Haste 2/2 for free. Well, that's so much. That's just so good, because you just play him and you get in 2 damage. Bam, done, 2 damage. So at least you've done something. Well, no matter what happens to him, you've probably done something other than just trade it for a removal spell. And then you can get him back whenever you want, basically. You just have to aim something at the face. So That means that if you've got a Phoenix in the graveyard, then throwing a Searing Spear at their face to deal 3 damage, even if you're not killing them with it, it's not card disadvantage for you because you get another card back for it, namely this Phoenix. And that makes this deck work really well because now you don't need to kill all the guys. You just need to kill the guys that get in the way of your Phoenix shenanigans. Chandler's Spitfire doesn't have haste, doesn't do something the turn it comes into play, and is probably gonna get killed. So why am I running this? Well, because if you get to untap with this and you've got even 1 burn spell in your hand, and you get to clobber them for 4 damage with this and 3 damage from the burn spell at least, then you'll probably win the game, because that's 7 damage to the face, and not many people are gonna be able to recover from that much damage. And most of the time you have 2 burn spells in your hand, so if you get to untap with this guy, crazy things happen, and you can just focus your burn on outright killing them, basically. Flamebreak already talked about. Then there's Flames of the Bloodhand. This card is really good because it deals 4 damage rather than 3 damage, and it prevents life gain. However, you can't aim this at their guys, so I guess this is now as good a time as any to get into like the theoretical side of this deck, I would say. What's your game plan when you play this deck? Well, plan A is that you want to control the game, because this is more of a control deck than anything else. So plan A is to kill their creatures and then try and draw your game-winning cards like the Phoenixes and stuff like that. Just wear them out until try and get them with card advantage. And this is a really good card for card advantage, by the way. And as is Flamebreak. So you want to try and get as much card advantage with this deck as possible in the early games. And then once you're safe, then you can start dealing damage to their face. But that means that you don't at all times of the game want to draw this thing when you're trying to look for a kill spell, for something to kill one of their creatures. So that's why I'm only running 2 of them, because they don't fit with plan A, they fit for plan B. And plan B is that sometimes if you draw enough burn, then you can go for the face. But this plan is always worse, no matter how much burn you're gonna draw, because you can't predict what the opponent is gonna do. And sometimes you really they get like a lifelink guy or something, and you really just need that burn to deal with the creatures instead. And you're gonna be too late. And it's always you can't very well predict it. But sometimes you just get this game stolen out from under your feet when you're trying to deal your damage to their face, and you don't always draw what you're trying to draw, what you're anticipating to draw, which is the other 2 burn spells, 1 or 2 burn spells that you're gonna need at the end when you get to that plan. So you can't always go for that strategy, and that's why plan A is to deal with the creatures first, deal with them second. That's why I don't run 3 of them, because I felt like I was drawing them a little bit too much for my liking. Anyways, that was a really long explanation for that simple thing. So let's go on with this deck and talk a little bit about what did I not talk about yet? Okay, yeah, Flames of the Firebrand is an amazing card. You can deal 3 damage up or down, whichever way you want, divided over 3 targets, 2 targets, or 1 target, no matter what. So this card is really good because I wish there were 4 of these actually. And the card is really good because it allows you to get that card advantage I was talking about earlier, which helps you with plan A, dealing with the creature while still keeping cards in your hand, and then later on being able to apply the pressure from all the card advantage you gained at the start. Because this card, it will at least deal with 2 of their guys most of the time, so it's really good that way. Prodigal Pyromancer is probably not good enough for this deck, even if it wasn't for Flamebreak, but there is Flamebreak, so you don't even need to think about it. He's on the ground, you don't run him. I'd already talked about those, so then we get to the Sulfuric Vortex, which is an amazing card that you gotta run. Probably the best card in the deck, not gonna lie. It just keeps under pressure, and with this deck you don't care about your life total as much. Yes, I did say that it's a control deck and you're trying to control the opponent. However, as long as you can control the opponent, as long as they don't get to have creatures on the field that can actually threaten your life total all that much, then you don't care about your life total. And this deck is really good now, very good at doing that. And that's why, you know, life total isn't as important as most new players would always assume. The most important thing is the clock. And the clock means that who's going to die first if everything stays the way it is. And this deck is really good at just, you know, making sure that they will die before you will die. So that's why Sulfuric Vortex is a very good card in this deck. And of course it prevents life gain, which is really something that this deck has trouble dealing with. So that's why you gotta include it. And Chain Reaction is an amazing card as well. This is also a lot of... Man, I want to say this is the best card in the deck now, but you know, nah, I'm pretty sure that this is. But anyways, Chain Reaction is also a really good card, just 4 mana, and it just deals with all the guys. Sometimes you have to drop a Phoenix for it. So what, your Phoenixes will come back, their guys won't. So, Sweepers in red, really good, because they give you card advantage. Something that red has trouble with. And if you don't get card advantage, the thing is, then you're gonna run out of things to play eventually, and you're not gonna be able to cast your spells because you don't have any spells. And that's really bad for a burn deck. So that's why you want to make sure that you always get some kind of incremental advantage out of what you're doing. Anyways, Firewing Phoenix is also really card advantage because this guy never dies unless he gets exiled. In which case he gets exiled and he doesn't die. Because exiling is the same as... Yeah, okay. Okay, so Firewing Phoenix seems like a really good card, especially for all the card advantage I was talking about just now. However, he's a guy that comes down for turn 4 with 2 toughness. And you're probably gonna have to trade with something. Okay, so you trade. Your guy's gonna come back, right? So what does it matter? Well, it matters because then you have to spend the following 2 turns, turn 5 and turn 6, getting it back. When you could be playing, I don't know, Inferno Titan or something else amazing that is way better than a 4/2 that has flying and doesn't even have haste. And you know, it's like getting your guy unsummoned, except worse, because you have to also get it out of the graveyard before you're gonna play it, and it's just not great. And the 4 cost to return him from the graveyard to your hand, that doesn't get cheaper when you have these Ruby medallions out. So even if you can play him for 3 mana, then you're gonna have to return him for 4 mana, and you know that still kind of sucks. And it's basically like getting Time Warp walked when this guy dies, and your best play at that point is to return this guy to your hand. Then you're not having a very good day. If you're both just top decking and drawing absolutely nothing, then this guy can be great, but that's just not the reality most of the time, and most of the time he sucks. Furnace Whelp, well, if this guy isn't good, then Furnace Whelp isn't good either. This guy was probably the best card in the Dragons deck in the previous game, but the Dragons deck in the previous game was totally crappy. So, whatever, right? But yeah, he's another fire breathing guy, and you don't want to run fire breathing guy. This guy does fly, so he gets around your flame break, sure, but on the other hand, nah. And then we go up to the Furnace of Wrath, which is probably gonna be the card for most people. Like, if people are gonna have complaints about my deck build, then it's probably gonna include Furnace of Wrath. That's probably the first card people would be complaining about. So yes, I do recognize the fact that it's a weird card to include in this deck. I do understand that you would be skeptical about it, but give it a try because it's a really good card actually. It turns out that it gives you a lot more advantage than the opponent, as long as you use it correctly. Like, if they've got 2 huge dudes on the field and you tap out to play this, then you're not using this card correctly. Sometimes, however, you know that when you drop this you're gonna take 6 damage, and sometimes that's definitely worth it, because if you got like this in your hand, you can deal, I don't know, 2 damage here, 2 damage there, 2 damage there. Like, you can do so many things with this card all of a sudden. With this card, no, this card doesn't have, this deck doesn't have discarding, but no, that's not what I meant. Oh man, I'm weird sometimes. Yeah, you'll have to forgive me for that. But anyways, Flame Break deals 6 damage to everything. Like, okay, so number one, like plan A, like I said, was to deal with their creatures. Okay, so what happens when someone plays a creature that is too big to deal with one card? Then you have to use 2 cards on it. Well, if you got Furnace of Wrath out, you don't have to. You can deal with all the guys, trading 1 for 1 with your cards, and get an advantage out of that. So like, this is the card that helps you win the game when you don't have the kind of hand to go to the face and you're playing against Pack Instinct, for instance. Then getting this card out is really going to be a boon for you. As long as you get it out soon enough, that is. And you know, it helps against life gain as well, obviously, as long as they're not life linking off of you. But it just helps a lot, because suddenly you've got that much more reach. That can be really really important and really good for you, especially if you already kind of have the damage to deal with them, but you're not really drawing whatever else you need. This makes it real easy to kill them outright. And it also, even if you can't do that, then it still helps you to deal with their creatures easier. You are the control deck, so you should be able to set up a situation where this is more beneficial to you than to the opponent. And then there's the Obsidian Fireheart, which is a great card. 4-cost guy, 4/4. This is already like a solid guy, because it's a 4/4, and it survives your own Flame Break, which is important, of course. But just this ability, if you get to Blaze counter one of the lands once, then they're on a clock, which they can't get off of, like unless they kill their own land or something silly like that. But if you get to just use this ability once, then they have to race you. There's just no choice. So it's really good, especially against control decks. Most of the time you drop this guy, since most of your other guys are recurring, like your Phoenixes, they come back. Most people aren't interested in killing those, so they're gonna have a kill spell for this guy. So what you do is, if you can afford it, if the game is going a little bit slowly, especially against these control decks that I was just talking about, then the game is gonna go a little bit slowly. So you just wait until you have 7 mana, and then you drop him, and then you can use his ability on the same turn. So, you know, that ensures that you're gonna be able to light up one of their lands. And then we get to the 5 mana. Yeah, we do. I'm confusing myself now. Okay, so Chandler Fury is just a weird spell. I'm not using, what's it called, you know, I'm not using Rain of Embers, so I'm not using this spell at all, because Rain of Ember is definitely the better version of the two, because it costs 2 mana to do the same thing, basically. And of course, yeah, this deals 4 damage to them, but for 5 mana. And really, in the end, if you're trying to kill them outright with damage, then you want the most cheap spells as possible, because that means you can play more of them on the same turn. This isn't the best to deal immediate damage to them. And it's also not the kind of card you want to deal with the creatures, because it only deals 1 damage to each of the creatures. Most creatures just don't die from 1 damage. Like I said, only goblins really is the only card it really applies to. So no, it's not a great card. Then there is, you know, Cone of Flame, which I guess is a better version of the same kind of card that is in Obedient Dead, because you can at least deal 1 damage to yourself, so you're at least gonna be able to play this most of the time, because they just need, like, you can deal damage to players, so you can deal 3 damage to a creature, 2 damage to them and 1 damage to yourself, and that's not absolutely terrible, but it's not as good as, say, you know, Searing Blaze. Because you're dealing damage to yourself, which you aren't with Searing Blaze. You deal more damage with Searing Blaze to them, and it doesn't cost 5 freaking mana, so no thanks. Alright, Fire Elemental is just a very vanilla guy, and you don't need him in this deck. Definitely not good enough, and yeah, that's just the only thing I gotta say about him. He's not good enough, basically. Fire Servant, for a card that doubles damage, you know, he's great, but he's easier to deal with than Furnace of Wrath. And he's a 5-drop, and at 5 mana he's probably gonna be a little bit too late. So I prefer Furnace of Wrath, because they can't actually deal with it. Whereas this guy dies to pretty much any kill spell imaginable, because he has 3 toughness. Turn 5, so no. Then there's Beacon of Destruction, which is an amazing card. aside from plenty of obvious use, like this is your only card basically that deals 5 damage outright to anything. Yeah, it's your only spell that deals 5 damage. So you gotta include it for that reason. It's an instant as well, amazing. And it gets shuffled back into your library where you can draw it again, maybe. Something that you can use this Beacon of Destruction for is to prevent yourself from getting milled. Like if you're going to 0 cards in your library and they say go, then at the end of their turn you can play Beacon of Destruction. Put it in your library because it gets shuffled back there, and then you draw your beacon and you say, haha, now is my turn and I kill you. So that can prevent you from being milled for a turn, which is important to know, you know. So something to keep in mind if you're playing against mill with that card in your hand. You can always use that as such. Magma Phoenix is a great card. You don't always want to draw 2 of them. In fact, you never want to draw 2 of them pretty much, but I still included 2 of them because that's how good they are. Gives me a little more chance to draw one. 5 cost free guy with flying when he dies deals. You know, he pretty much wipes the board when he dies. And you can return him. Yeah, his returning works the same way as Firewing Phoenix returning. However, you wipe the board when you die, so you're not in immediate danger. So you're not really getting time walked on because the opponent doesn't have anything on the field either. You know, most of the time. Of course, 3 damage isn't enough to always kill everything, but you know what I'm saying, right? If you wipe the board, you're probably gonna be able to, at least in the near future, get a chance to get this guy back into your hand, which makes him a lot better than the 4-2 guy. And in fact, I was running one of the 4-2 guys, and I replaced him with another Magma Phoenix for that very reason. Okay, so Fire Blast, also one of the best cards in this deck. Yeah, sometimes you have to play this for 6 mana and you're not happy. Sometimes you have to sacrifice 2 of your mountains to kill one of the guys. Well, that doesn't happen very often though. Most of the time though, what you're gonna use this for is for plan B, you know, what I was talking about earlier. You just go for the face with this because you got 4 extra damage that you don't have to spend mana on. So most of the time you're gonna be able to raise them when you have this in hand. But not always the case. It's good though, because sometimes, like, even when that doesn't happen, it's not a terrible card because you can be tapped out and they can be like, haha, now I put an aura on my guy. And you can be like, no, I'll just sacrifice these mountains that I don't need anymore, and you know, Fire Blaze should do it. And 2 for 1 them of that. So even if you don't use it for the kind of the thing it's intended to be used on, then it can still be a really good card. So you know, it's definitely worth running. And it just another card that improves your reach, and that makes you able to, from a higher life total, be able to bring them down to 0. So that's a very cool card to have in a deck like this. Very useful. Inferno Titan is an amazing card and you gotta run this. I don't see why not, but if you don't get it, then he's a 6 cost guy that comes in and deals 3 damage or something. So you get something out of him, and they have to use a removal spell on it to get rid of it. Because the problem with most big guys is that, you know, you spend 6 mana on a big guy and then they use a 2 mana removal spell, and you know, you lose out on that exchange. But this guy not so much, because at least, even if they just kill him immediately, you've at least dealt 3 damage somewhere, and maybe killed like 1 or 2 dudes, or even if you just aim into their face, they've got 3 less health now, and they had to use a removal spell on it. So you kind of still 2 for 1ing them. So that's why this guy is really good. And Hostility is a guy with haste, yeah. And I really like him, but he does get chump blocked a lot. He doesn't deal damage like, he doesn't always deal something like the Inferno Titan. Now that the 2, I prefer the Inferno Titan. And I was using one of these Hostilities. The reason why I really decided that they're not worth it is the fact that it doesn't work with Flames of Bloodhand. Because the damage can't be prevented, and this guy says, prevent that damage, and if the damage is prevented, then put a 3/1 red elemental body on it. So those 2 cards don't work together, and that's the reason for me. I don't like having non-bows, which is basically like the opposite of a combo, you know. And I don't like that. I don't like having cards that don't work together in the same deck. And this card just isn't as powerful as an Inferno Titan. I wanted to include another one because I felt like 2 6-drops was maybe not enough. But you know what, I included instead another Magma Phoenix. So yeah. And then we go to this Kargin Firebird, which is just like a 6 cost 3/3 with flying. There is sometimes a 6/6 with flying, which he should have been. But come on, this is already a 6/6 either way and deals 3 damage when it comes into play. Like, there's just no comparison there. And then there's Disaster Ages, which, what? Read this card, and I don't think I have to explain why it's bad. Dragon Mage is, yeah, he's a big guy, and if he ever gets to attack once, then you're probably golden. But he is 7 mana, and that's a little bit too much for this deck, and he doesn't have haste. Flame Wave, I liked it in the previous deck. In this deck, not so much, because this deck is a lot more powerful and doesn't really need it. And this deck, this deck is a little bit more about controlling them, I do think. So, meh. The other deck was more about having a bunch of dudes and just killing whatever is blocking them and then getting in for the damage with that. And in that case, then Flame Wave was a lot better, I think, there. But even so, like, I don't need the 7 cost spell in this deck, so. And then there's lastly Worldfire, which just, what? It's 9 mana, no. And you're not even guaranteed to win the game when you spend the 9 mana for it. So alright, that's my build. It's a little bit light on the heavy drops, even for a control deck, but this is a weird deck when it comes to control. And you've got plenty of X spells like these, so it's definitely, the mana definitely isn't wasted on it. And I feel like this is the best way to run it, because this is what, gets me the best results. And I took out the cards that don't always give me great results. So that's how I build my decks. I don't know about you, but I take out the cards that don't always give me the best results. Gee, man, I must be a genius for being able to come up with that. I realize that I'm rambling. Is basically the conclusion to that. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Gameplay is gonna come on the way. Gameplay to Duels community as well. Maybe in the future, what I'm thinking about is explaining all the damage prevention and stuff like that better in a separate video. But I'm not sure about that, because there's a lot to it. There's a lot to life gain and damage, and life gain prevention, damage prevention, and all that kind of jazz, and the different terminologies used for it, and replacement effects. It's pretty complicated, but I feel like, especially when playing this deck, you do run into it in this game a lot, so it can be important. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. My name has been Nemo, and I will still be Nemo next time. See you then. Oh yeah, by the way, like is always appreciated. Comments are definitely appreciated, and of course subscriptions. Yeah, man, I'm giving you the thumbs up now. I know you can't see it, but that's what I'm doing. So go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye. Hey guys, Nemo here, and today I wanted to talk about my deck. What? That sounds terrible. Oh my god. Okay, take 2.